Welcome, Junior Tukkies. This is Miss Kutsia, and I'm going to teach you today about the cell. This is our first chapter for biology for grade 9. So let's have a look at what is the aim of the lesson and what we will be doing. So firstly, you should know that cells are microscopic, so we cannot see them with the naked eye. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to name, identify, and even draw and label the basic parts of a plant and an animal cell. Then you will also be able to write down the functions of the different organelles or the structures that you find in both the plant and animal cell. And then lastly, you will be able to compare an animal and plant cell by simply drawing a table so you can tabulate it, explain the difference between a plant and animal cell. So what is a cell? A cell is a microscopic structure. It's the smallest structural and functional unit of a living organism. It ensures that an organism functions the way it has to, and that all comes from a small little microscopic cell. So let's have a look at two types of cells which we will find. We will find a prokaryote versus an eukaryote. So prokaryote will have no true nucleus, whereas a eukaryotic cell, like a human cell or animal or plant cell, will have a true nucleus. So you'll see there's similar characteristics like DNA, the membrane, and ribosomes, which you do find in both of these organisms. But you do not find membrane-bound organelles in the prokaryote, but you will find them in the eukaryotic cell. So what does it mean to be microscopic? So this means that you cannot see the organism or the cell with the naked eye. We unfortunately have to use a microscope to study the function or the movement of these cells or even certain organisms. So why are these cells considered to be living? So firstly, we will look at the 7 life processes: cellular respiration, nutrition, excretion, movement, irritability, reproduction, and growth. So if we go back to grade 8, excretion will refer to removal of metabolic waste, and irritability to how things react to the environment, to heat and cold and touch. So let's look at the basic structure of an animal cell. So we were looking at a plant and an animal, but now we will focus on an animal. Firstly, we have a vacuole. Then the outside of the cell is our cell membrane. Then we have the nucleolus. Then our next structure is our nuclear membrane, and then the chromatin network, or even known as the DNA or the genetic material. So the nucleolus and the nuclear membrane and the DNA together will form the nucleus, the brain of the cell. Then we also have the cytoplasm, which is the light gray structure, and then next we have the powerhouse of the cell, which is the mitochondria. So let's move over to our plant cell and see where our plant and animal cell will differ and where they will look the same. So let's have a look. Firstly, we have a larger vacuole in comparison to the animal cell. And then also something new is that the plant cell has a cell wall. It is always the outside lining of the cell. Then the inside lining is our cell membrane, which you also find in the animal cell. You have your mitochondria, your nucleus, your cytoplasm. And then also from grade 8, you will remember the chloroplast, where photosynthesis will take place. So this is an important structure that distinguishes that differentiates the plant from the animal cell. So let's look at the basic functions of all these organelles, these structures found on the inside of the cells. So firstly, we have a vacuole in the plant and the animal cell. So in the animal cell, the vacuole is extremely small and sometimes it's not even present. Whereas in a plant cell, it's a large space filled with cell sap, which provides support to the cell. And then it also stores waste products and also water. Then we have the cell membrane. So the cell membrane is extremely important because it controls what goes into and out of the cell. So the cell membrane is selectively permeable. So a very big new word, but it only just means that it's very selective. It only selects specific substances to move into and out of the cell. Then we have the nucleus. I remember it as the brain. So it controls all processes that takes place on the inside of the cell, and it also contains the DNA or the chromatin network or your genetic material. Then your nuclear membrane also allows certain substances to move into and out of the nucleus, but this is a double membrane that contains pores. So pores is small little holes in this membrane which allows these substances to move into and out of the cell. So let's move on to the cytoplasm. So this is a jelly-like liquid that fills the inside of the cell, and this is where all chemical reactions will take place inside the cell. So next we have the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. So the mitochondria plays a very important role during cell respiration, because during cell respiration it takes glucose and releases the energy in glucose, which then each cell can use for the 7 life processes. Next is the cell wall. So cell walls are made out of cellulose. So interesting, humans cannot digest cellulose. So cellulose is an important building block or a structural material of the plant cell, as it helps the cell to keep a rigid shape, and it protects the cell against mechanical damage, harsh winds, or even hail and a lot of rain, especially like what we are having recently. So it actually protects the plant against it. So next, but not least, we will have chloroplast. So chloroplast, you will recall from grade 8. So this is where the chloroplast contains a green pigment called chlorophyll, and it absorbs light energy so that the plant can then produce its own energy-rich food, which we know as glucose during photosynthesis. And that is it for my first chapter for natural science. Please make sure to watch my next videos.